Here we go. Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately titled IPA-USA. IPA-USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. And as part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats, and we have over 200 of them that are free to you. To find these Porch Play Chats, go to our website at IPAUSA.org. And up in that top right-hand corner, you'll see our Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify buttons that will get you to each of those platforms. And if you are a friend, follow, subscribe, magically every Monday morning, a new Porch Play Chat will appear in your feed. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm president of IPA USA, and with me on the porch is Rachel Franz. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Deb.
Rachel is a fierce fighter for honoring children in childhood and an educational manager at Fairplay, which works towards systems level change around how kids get hooked on screen time and builds a world in which kids can be kids, free from the influence of corporations. As a former educator and director in both indoor and all outdoor early learning programs, Rachel also offers training and consulting to ECE programs on topics ranging from nature play and outdoor preschool and anti-oppression, child-centered approaches to learning, and of course, play. And her consulting company is Twig and Thread Consulting, which I love. So today, Rachel's going to talk to us about technology in young children, one of my pet peeves. And my question to you, Rachel, is using technology in early childhood settings essential to a child-centered approach?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this question more and more deeply lately. We know that best practices are in the early childhood classroom are play-based. They follow children's interests and their needs and their identities. And it's very clear from centuries of research, right, that hands-on play, play in nature, play with loose parts and open-ended materials, and things that use all the senses are key for child development, and they're the how of how children learn. But especially over the last decade, it's become clear that young children are more and more interested in tablets, iPads, phones, and computers. And using these things is a very common household happening, with many preschoolers using tech over 3 hours a day. And what might get confusing for us then is, do we follow children's interests by including iPad time or smartphones or other technologies in the classroom? This winter, NAUIC released an edition of Young Children magazine. It's this one right here, for those of you who may have gotten it in the mail. And the edition frames the issue of screen time and technology use in the classroom as a necessity. And it poses that if we get stuck on the public health concerns about media or the research, we're neglecting children's needs in the digital age. And I'll read a quote from one of the articles, which says, "Often, children's increased digital engagement is perceived as separate from or in competition with traditional play. It has not been clear how to intentionally and appropriately link play-based teaching and learning with it. An emergent concept, digital play, aims to fill this gap. In digital play, technology experiences are viewed as integrated into a range of play activities rather than being separate from them. Digital play is a vehicle for playing and learning with technology." Now, of course,
Okay.
let me wrap this
Okay,
up, and then I really want to hear what you have to say, Deb,
because I'm
because
losing my mind right now.
right. So, of course, we as educators, we want to meet children's needs and follow their interests, right? We know that's best practice. And the problem with this frame, I think, is that technology use is not and never has been a need for child development. And in fact, there's little to no evidence that supports technology use in early childhood development. And most of the research says that tech has a negative impact.
And there's tons of
Um,
research,
so
tons of research. I
exactly,
talk
tons,
about it in my
tons.
classrooms. Okay, so why do we think NAYC, who should be promoting developmentally effective practices, is really encouraging teachers and educators to add more technology to a classroom instead of taking technology away from the classroom, which is a much better option, right? Children have plenty of technology at home. They do not need technology at school. They need to be playing at school. So help me kind of figure that out.
I think there are a number of ways to look at this. I think that, number one is our lack of valuing play in our systems, and really valuing sort of the how and why of children learn. And I think by trying to sort of fudge this definition of digital play, it's really like it's trying to fit in this piece of society that is huge and that is prevalent in children's lives, but it's not actually the real rich play that children need.
No. And so I wonder how early childhood educators feel, and feel free to reach out to to us at IPA-USA when uh when we know, and there's tons of research out there that show the damaging and harm that early use of technology is creating with young children's development. I mean, I show them in my classroom all the time. You all you have to do is go look at Bandura's Bobo doll experiment, and you'll recognize that in Piaget's pre-operational, children believe everything they see. It's what they see is what they believe. And so if they're seeing, maybe mom and dad are watching a movie and they think the child is playing over here, they're still seeing whatever is happening, still hearing the language that's taking place while they may be playing over here. If they're constantly on iPads or on phones, I think the biggest piece for me is there's such a disconnect between what people are telling us, which is children are lagging behind in social emotional development and in their academic skills and in their physical domains of development as
Mhm.
well. And they are blaming kids being on screens during COVID. So why then do we think kids being on screens now is beneficial?
Right. I think that some of this messaging is like coming disguised as cultural relevance and
Mm,
really trying to say like this is children's culture now. This is part of who we are post-pandemic. It was also part of how things were going previous to the pandemic, although rates of screen time doubled during the pandemic, and there's not evidence yet to show that they've decreased. So I think like there is some tension here between being like culturally relevant, um, in the moment, like respecting children's interests and honoring children in childhood and their development. And to me, those are two different things.
they are. All children are very interested in candy.
Exactly.
but that does not mean they need candy all the time. And following that interest isn't really healthy for them.
Right.
And
And
so why would we think this one and following their interest? I mean, it is again in preschool and infant and toddler rooms in preschool, they don't need screens. They need to be playing with hands-on materials. They don't need the teacher. And unfortunately, I see this happening all the time. Teachers are using YouTube videos for finger plays and song time.
yeah.
They're using YouTube videos to read a story to children while they do something else. And my lights are flickering again, just so you know. We have a big storm outside. Um, so it hasn't been a problem all day, but seems to be a problem now. So if we lose again, it comes right back. Um,
Technology is coming for us in this
it is. It's like,
discussion.
oh my God, it's talking bad things about
Right.
technology, and so they want to shut us up. So, I worry that we're succumbing to pressure, right? So, parents feel pressure of getting their child ready, and principals feel pressure of getting their those students ready for those standardized tests. And so everything is being pushed down, which is ignoring the importance of development and what children really need because we're
Right.
trying to hurry it up. So,
And
Mike,
one thing I'll add to that, Deb, is like, we have to think about where does that definition of readiness come from, right? It comes from having a chronically underfunded education system and
mhm,
chronically underfunded early care and learning system
mhm,
that all of a sudden, like in order to get funding, we have to do standardized tests. We have
mhm,
to prove certain types of learning in very standardized, inequitable ways, right? And it also comes from capitalism and from corporations, right?
mhm,
There are consistent marketing messages coming from apps like ABC Mouse or a variety of things that we see in the NAUIC conferences very frequently that say like you're not doing enough to prepare children, like they need this in order to get a leg up. And in a society where there are already so many inequities and there are so many people struggling, right? Like an instant gratification leg up promise from a tech company is
mhm.
very enticing. And we find that, you know, folks from marginalized communities are more likely to use apps with manipulative tactics built into them to keep kids on longer and
Mhm.
to have them clicking into ads and things like that. And so like the pressure is coming from a number of different places, none of which like truly have the child and childhood at the center. They either have profit at the center of their why,
Mhm.
or there is, like there are structures and funding systems um, and those sorts of things in the center.
Well, and I think principals and superintendents who are trying to get those test scores up are also, I think that capitalism piece of, we can promise you that your test scores will go up if you use this app or something in the classroom. And we know that doesn't work. I mean,
Right.
children are just flipping through the screens and doing nothing that is showing up in any positive increase in their development in math skills and reading skills, because
Right.
that seems to be all that we're focusing on right now. And so, it's all people. So what we need to do, and whoever you are out there listening, and I hope there's many of you, what you need to do is forget all that stuff. Think of all those things that all the commercials that they have on TV, especially the drug commercials, which is a whole nother porch play chat, and
Mhm.
saying, ask your doctor about this, ask your doctor. That does not mean any of those things are good for you. It is a commercialism to make more money. And
Mm.
so the same thing applies with with these apps and programs that are lying to you, because that's not how children develop. They develop with hands-on experiences. They need concrete materials. they don't need an app or an iPhone or a
And
smart board.
yeah, and what's sort of tricky with some of the arguments, especially sort of in the framing argument that was written by Dr. Faith Rogow in this article is, you know, the argument is that how
We're not preparing children for the use of technology in the future, even though what they're using in the future will look nothing like what they're using now.
yes, and it is, you know, like if we don't teach children how to, so the whole frame is trying to use a media literacy frame for all of this. And so the idea is that we don't help children sort of like navigate the pros and cons of an app or think critically about some of the pieces of an app or a piece of technology, then we are denying them skill building.
Well,
Um, it,
preschoolers can't do that anyway, and neither can
exactly.
kindergarten, first or second graders.
Exactly. So it is it's a again sort of being disguised as developmentally appropriate practice because we are helping children become critical thinkers, but we are denying where they're actually at in their development, and that is not developmentally appropriate. So I think it it gets really frustrating when all of a sudden there's this like it's creating this sort of war between people who really know the research about screen time and who really want healthy childhoods for young children and people who want healthy childhoods for young children but like are not looking at the research and are not or it's they're sort of pitting us against one another when we
Yeah.
all should be really centered on children.
Well, when we think about childhood and we think about the American Academy of Pediatrics saying absolutely no screens for children under 2, unless it's Zooming with a grandparent or a family member that may not be local. Absolutely none. And for 3 to 5 year olds, 1 hour a day,
Mm-hmm.
which is 4 times more than they're currently getting,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, they're
Yeah,
getting 4 times more
right.
of that
Yeah.
every day. I mean, you see them on the iPhone in their car seats. You see
Mm-hmm.
them on an iPad in their car seats as families are moving back and forth to and from work. You see the TV on so mom or dad can start cooking dinner because they're tired and they need to get it done.
Yeah.
You see them used as an entertainment device in restaurants so that parents can have a conversation. And so I don't know. It it concerns me
Mm.
that an organization that has been seen for almost 100 years. Its 75th birthday, I think, was in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. Um, is promoting something that we know isn't what children actually develop. And so I think if we can focus on moving away from what people are telling us works and believing what we know works and protecting children's childhood. If they can't play, then they're not learning any agency in their lives.
Right.
They're not able to say, "Oh, I'm interested in playing over here, and I have the opportunity to play over here, and I can play with who I want to play with, and I can stay as long as I choose to stay."
Yeah.
It's that child agency is powerful, and if they don't feel like they have any power because they're constantly being told what to do and where to go, then that's harming their development. So if we can just look at it as what promotes development, what harms development, and then move past the things that we know harm development. And when parents ask, tell them why and give them the stuff.
Right.
You know, did you know that blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah. One of the resources that we published within the past year at Fairplay through our Screen Time Action Network is called the Screen Time Early Childhood Action Kit. And it's filled with 10 different sort of fact and action sheets. So here are the facts about certain aspects of technology and child development, and then actions are some of those developmentally appropriate activities you can do as alternatives, or things,
Mhm.
things you can do as an adult, as an educator, as a caregiver, as a parent, as an auntie, to to things to look out for as well. And it also includes some letters from childcare centers to families, and from families to childcare centers, to start the dialogue around sort of screen time in these programs. And I think it's, I'm biased, but it's a great resource for folks to start with, and it's free, and um, it can be really, really helpful if you just need sort of a one pager on,
Oh, I
why.
think that's a great idea. So will
Yeah,
you send me that link and I'll
I
stick it
will.
in the YouTube video?
It'll be
So
down
we'll
below.
get you that kit so that you can help families understand that this isn't the best. I mean, just thinking of the language opportunities that children are losing,
Mm.
and think of think the younger they are, when their language centers are forming and they're listening to language, the language and vocabulary that they're learning is spoken to them, reading books to them, singing songs with them. And if all they're hearing is the mechanical voice, even remember what was the toy that it would spin and you could do the animal sound?
Oh
What
my
was that
gosh.
toy?
I have no idea what that was called, but I had that as a child.
Yes, and it didn't sound anything like the animal.
No.
When I would go and hear the real animal, I'd say, that can't be a chicken. That's not how they sound. Because I had that toy, right? I had that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's how old I am.
Right.
But so when we have those voices that are not humans,
Mm.
children's language learning connections are hearing whatever their home language is or whatever their second language is in a voice that is not authentic. And so we also have to worry about those things. And, I mean, how many articles are out there about screen time and adolescence and what it's doing to
The
their
mental health
feeling of
crisis. Yep.
self-worth
Yeah.
and body image and all of those things. So I think what I think we have to forget that hype
Mm.
and ignore it. And we have to everyone needs to say, is this something that helps development or is this something that harms development?
Right. And one of the things that, is argued in the article, that, if we are always shutting down children's conversations about things they're playing on the computer, or their favorite characters, or things like that, like you're um, you're dismissing them and their interests. And that's true. And no one is saying that we are shutting down their conversations about those things.
I
And so
mean,
I
they're
think
going to
it's
see them at home
right.
on TV and they bring those things into the classroom and they want to be Superman or Spider-Man or whatever the current cartoon heroes are. You don't shut them down.
Right. And so I think that there are some assumptions made by folks who are really trying to hold tight to this idea of digital play and um, media literacy pedagogy, that, yeah, are making some assumptions about how things are approached. And of course, like, there are many different ways of approaching children in childhood, and it doesn't all look the same. but I think best practice is that, we respond and we interact with them based on what they're talking about. And it
what their interests
doesn't,
are.
right. It doesn't mean that we bring that, we watch Paw Patrol every day at school.
Right.
So,
And so the way to avoid any of this is to not have any of it in your classroom, right?
mm,
So if you don't have a smart board, and I hope no one bought a smart board for a preschool classroom because
there
they
are
should be paying
many.
the,
Yeah.
oh my God, they should be paying the teachers more than buying a smart board because smart boards are not good for preschoolers or infants or toddlers or kindergartners or first or second graders. And it doesn't, and if you don't have computers, I remember when I was a pre-K teacher that it was back in the 90s when computers, were really big. And we didn't have the internet, but they had programs that they could do on the computers. And I walked into a room and said, I don't want any of those because they take up too much space. I need space for dramatic play. I need block space.
Right.
I don't want any of those. So get those out of here. And parents would go into other classrooms and say, why don't you have computers? I said, because that's not how children learn. They learn by playing with each other and by having space to do that.
Mm,
And they just took up too much room. And so if you feel confident enough in yourself and you can say, that's they get plenty of technology outside of preschool time. You're not paying me to have them to be on a computer. You're paying me to scaffold their development and to allow them to play and to do observations. And that's what you're paying me for. And to build strong relationships.
yeah.
You're not paying me to let them play on a computer or an iPad these days. So,
I think people will say, well, no, not every child has access to this technology. So my child is going to be behind if they don't get it in the classroom. And there's no research to support that a child starting to use technology at age 8, for example, when their brains might be a little bit more ready to receive this type of technology, that like puts them behind their peers. So
absolutely not.
I think there is a gap in terms of access to internet and technology in many, many different families. And it's really important to acknowledge that. And I think families can rest a little bit easier with knowing that, their child will be okay if they are not spending hours on an iPad
Right. And
in early
the
childhood.
technology in 6 months or tomorrow is going to look different than the technology today. And you can't keep up with it. And it's not like they're stupid. So they're going to be able to learn to do whatever they need to do as they get older.
Yeah,
And trying to push that down like we're trying to push down all the academics is
right.
ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just not worth if we think about we need to protect childhood, we need to follow what we know about development. And we try to distance ourselves from the things that we know don't work. So sometimes that pressure, you you feel like the pressure is forcing you to make decisions that you know aren't good for children, and then you lose sleep over it. Don't do that.
right.
Don't it, do what's best for children, not what you feel like you have to do to comply. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think the biggest thing is that we have lost um, people learning how to advocate for themselves because it's been taken when we changed the standards
Mm,
for higher education. We got rid of all the leadership courses.
mhm.
And so I think people don't even know how to advocate for themselves or advocate for the children in their classroom. So I think that's a big piece that we need to work on.
And that is so much of what we do in early childhood education
Mm-hmm.
because we are partly because we are a very under-resourced sector of the workforce, and because there are so many systems at play that don't honor children and respect childhood and honor the the rights of the child, especially in the US. You know, I think we have to be advocates, and it needs to be part of our training, and it needs to be part of our everyday practice. And
Mhm.
that's really hard to expect when you are paid so little as an educator. And it's one of the most important pieces of the job.
It is, yeah. And so I want to give you permission to not to advocate for children in your classroom. You need to have, I'm giving you that permission. And then when people say, why aren't they on iPads? You can say, we're going to give you the toolkit from Fairplay. And you can say, because of these 7 reasons. And, you know, you can say, this is a screen-free classroom. This is a screen-free school. Directors, you can say that because children get enough screen time outside of preschool. You're not paying me to have your child on screens. I mean, if you want to look at it that way, then look at it that way. You're paying for me to foster your child's development.
Mm,
Screens don't do that.
mm,
And and so, you know, that might be the argument that you need to make.
mhm.
So Rachel, any last comments before
Um,
we close out?
I'll just say, and I know that this will probably be posted after we get this letter out, but our
Mhm.
Screen Time Action Network's early childhood work group is a great space for folks who are interested in this conversation and want to join. Our membership's free, so join us. And they're also writing a letter directly to NAUIC about this issue. We'll be looking for signatories, and depending on when this gets launched, I'll make sure that there's a link to the published letter. I'll send that to you, Deb, and
This
so
should
folks
be
can read it.
July, I think.
Okay.
You should be in like the 3rd or 4th week of July,
Okay.
just so you know.
Great. Great.
So if
So
you'll
we'll
keep
see
me
how that lines up.
posted, yeah, and then we can put it in the YouTube video even after if
Perfect.
it's already released. But
Great.
Rachel, thank you so much for this amazing. I think it's so important that we lift up these issues of what everyone is struggling with, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think it's important that we give them some tools to use. So email me that toolkit again so I can stick it in,
Will do.
and hang tight while I close this out. So
Okay.
to
Thank
learn
you.
more about IPA USA, please visit our website at IPAUSA.org. And until next time, keep on playing.